Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer, because we've got to talk about a hidden, silent drain on your wallet. Seriously, we're going to explore how you might literally be losing thousands of dollars a year on everyday household purchases, and you probably don't even realize it's happening. Based on some pretty fascinating research from CartLens publications, we're looking at what's called the $2,400 leakage. And, more importantly, we're going to see how crowdsourced geospatial pricing networks are finally giving us the tools to reclaim our hard-earned money.
Now, you might be thinking, we live in this completely digital world, right? Where Amazon and online e-commerce just absolutely dominate every aspect of our lives. But despite that massive boom in online shopping, the U.S. Census Bureau points out a truly staggering reality. Get this, 85% of our essential household spending still happens entirely offline.
Yeah, 85%. That massive volume is happening right in your local grocery aisles and big box retailers. But here's the catch. It happens in what researchers call opaque brick-and-mortar stores. Think about it. Online, you can easily open up 3 browser tabs and compare prices in seconds, right? But physical store pricing, it's surprisingly hidden, it's highly localized, and it is incredibly hard to track. It's basically an environment perfectly designed to keep you in the dark about whether you're actually getting a fair deal.
So, moving into Section 1, the hidden retail leakage, uncovering physical retail pricing, let's look at how this builds into our first major problem, which is the wildly inconsistent nature of physical retail costs.
Think about this number for a second, 40%. According to longitudinal data from the National Bureau of Economic Research and the University of Chicago, identical consumer packaged goods, and I mean items carrying the exact same barcode, they can fluctuate up to 40% in price within just a 3-mile geographical radius. So you could literally be overpaying by 40% for the exact same box of cereal compared to a store that's just 2 traffic lights away. Crazy, right?
And these retailers aren't just guessing here. This massive variance is absolutely deliberate. It's driven by dynamic chain-level pricing, where algorithms adjust the costs based on neighborhood demographics and local real estate. It's also impacted by localized supply chain variations and clearance schedules. But you want to know the absolute biggest factor? High consumer search costs. Retailers know that driving around to check prices at 5 different physical stores just takes way too much of your time, your gas, and quite frankly, your mental energy. They're actively relying on that friction to maintain those inflated local margins.
Which brings us to Section 2, the markups of convenience, why delivery apps cost you more. Now you might be thinking, well, delivery apps are the perfect answer to bypass driving around to 5 different stores. But turning to those apps actually ends up costing you way more.
Relying on those convenience apps introduces a completely different, much more expensive problem. You see, ground truth shelf prices, meaning the actual printed tags sitting on the physical shelves, are completely divorced from delivery API markups. These third-party platforms are artificially inflating your item costs by 15 to 30%, and that is even before they tack on their service fees, delivery charges, and driver tips. So you aren't actually seeing the store's real price. You're seeing a heavily padded convenience price.
Oh, and it gets worse. A 2025 study by Consumer Reports and the Groundwork Collaborative audited these exact platforms, and they found that algorithmic price discrimination is totally rampant. 74% of the tested grocery items featured simultaneous price variations across different user accounts for the exact same store. Let that sink in. The algorithms are literally adjusting prices based on who is asking. This yields average variations of around 13%, and sometimes they're even adding peak markups of 23% on identical items.
So, the million-dollar question, or rather the $2,400 question, is how do we completely bypass these digital markups and find the real physical shelf price? That leads us to Section 3, building the geospatial lattice, ground truth data to the rescue.
The secret actually lies in those physical paper receipts handed out at the register. But as you can imagine, that presents a massive data challenge. I mean, how do you organize messy receipts? CartLens solves this by using advanced OCR AI models. Think of them as incredibly smart text scanners to extract the actual store prices right off the paper. But getting the text is really only half the battle here. How on earth do they make sense of all those weird, truncated, random abbreviations printed on the slips?
Well, they pull it off through a pretty clever 3-step process. First, they extract that chaotic raw text, like avocado Hass 3CT on one receipt and Hass avocados 3PK on another. Second, they use AI text embedding models to understand the actual human meaning behind those weird abbreviations.
And finally, through something called semantic normalization, the system mathematically groups all these messy variations into one single, clean inventory item. It perfectly pairs up identical products, preserving the brand and the pack size, regardless of how a specific store's cash register decided to abbreviate it. Now, because this ground truth data relies entirely on crowdsourcing, meaning real people scanning their own receipts, privacy has to be absolutely paramount. And that is exactly why the system uses what they call the sovereign protocol. It strictly protects participants through explicit opt-in rules. All your personal data and clerk tokens, totally anonymized and stripped out. Location tracking uses geospatial privacy gating, which basically means your data is aggregated at the regional zip code level, not your exact pinpoint GPS coordinates. Plus, it includes a sunset protocol for guaranteed account deletion. It really is a completely privacy-first index.
All right, so now that we've got a secure, highly accurate map of physical prices, what does this actually mean for your wallet? Let's check out Section 4, the efficiency ratio, reclaiming your wealth.
So often, household economics is just about restrictive budgeting, right? Basically just telling you to buy less stuff. CartLens completely flips this idea on its head with the efficiency ratio. Instead of restricting your budget, it actually tracks your buying performance by measuring the difference between what you paid and the verified regional price floor. Total leakage is simply the delta between your receipt and the absolute best price available within your local discovery radius.
And honestly, this is where it gets really fun and engaging. If you manage to find an item priced even lower than the established local floor and you scan your receipt, you achieve what's known as a lattice beater. You're capturing negative leakage, which is essentially pure direct profit on your margin, and simultaneously you're establishing a brand new pricing floor that benefits everyone else in the local network. You're actively reclaiming your margin. It's basically like a game where everyone wins.
But why does all this matter? Well, it all comes down to a $2,400 question. The Bureau of Labor Statistics states that the average American household spends over $9,800 annually on groceries and essentials. Due to that incredible geographic price dispersion we talked about earlier, the average household suffers a 24.5% optimization leakage. By tapping into this localized price discovery network, your household can eliminate that structural waste and literally reclaim over $2,400 every single year.
But practically speaking, how many participants does it actually take to make this crowdsourced network viable in your specific neighborhood? Let's look at Section 5, the Crowd Density Flywheel, Scaling the Network.
The data on this is super interesting because it shows the exponential, non-linear power of crowdsourcing. Consider what they call the critical plateau stage. You don't actually need thousands of people scanning receipts. You only need 20 active stores contributing scans within a 10-mile regional cluster. Once you hit that magic 20-store mark, pricing accuracy leaps up to 96.5%, and the data latency, meaning how old the price information is, drops to under 3 hours. So a highly dense, hyper-local network is sustained by a relatively small but active contributor base. It's an incredible, localized flywheel effect.
Ultimately, by bypassing delivery inflation and opaque physical merchants, this geospatial lattice returns pricing sovereignty completely back to you. And with autonomous systems like Cart Assistant right around the corner, ready to turn all this passive tracking into real-time automated execution, I really want to leave you with this provocative thought to consider today. If an AI automatically optimized your routes based on this incredibly accurate, localized physical lattice, how much of your wealth would you reclaim tomorrow?